Hi everybody, and thank you very much for tuning in to this particular discussion today. Today I'm with Dominic, who's one of our alumni who studied accounting and finance, and we're going to talk to him a little bit about his career and a little bit about his insight and what it was like to study at Newcastle University Business School. In the meantime, my name is Jennifer Simpson and I'm a careers consultant working within the business school, and without any further ado I'm going to pass over to Dominic to make his own introductions, and then we'll dive straight into the questions.
I'm Dominic Raymont. I work in the NHS. I've worked in the NHS for over 20 years now. Time flies when you're enjoying yourself. I'm Deputy Director of Temporary Staffing at NHS England, which basically means I run our national programme of work, looking at our workforce and particularly our temporary workforce. My degree initially was at Newcastle. Really enjoyed my time there. Came out of Newcastle in 1995 and I moved back 10 years later. I couldn't stay away from the place. I had a career in finance prior to getting into looking at workforce issues. So I qualified as an accountant after my accountancy degree, and then worked in various roles up to sort of Deputy Director of Finance level. So yeah, that's my career to date.
And obviously, I know there'll be a lot of changes between, was it 1995 that you graduated?
95, yeah.
What are your, I know it's asking you to go back a little bit, but what were your main takeaways and memories from studying at the university?
I think the kind of the standards that were always set by the university. It was, you know, I looked at various courses. I'm from Yorkshire originally, so looked at various courses across the country, and the one at Newcastle just looked like the most sort of rigorous one, and to be honest, at that stage of my life, the one that was most likely to get me into a job, which so proved.
Yeah, and you know, that's not changed. If anything else, it's even more employability and career focused these days. So I think you were probably a little bit ahead of your time there. In terms of your lifestyle at Newcastle, obviously study is important, careers are important, but also you know, the university experience has a lot more to offer than that. Were you involved in many extracurricular opportunities or activities?
Yeah, I mean, it was a wonderful time to be in Newcastle as well. You know, I like my sport, and although I'm not a Newcastle United fan, the football team was doing particularly well at that time. So that was a great sort of leisure outlet, and obviously, you know, it's a wonderful city to be a student in. You know, my own daughter is looking to study in Newcastle herself. So you know, we live here, and it's a fantastic place to be. I got involved in various things. So sort of the politics society, I was in that. We even formed our own society, the Curry Society, which was an interesting one to start up. But yeah, it was a great time to be in Newcastle.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we can't guarantee the football next season, but hey ho, the curry will always be there. And how would you say that the university and the course itself prepared you for industry? Were there any particular standouts that you think, well, actually that did stand me in good stead, or that did really introduce me to a certain way of thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. The job I went into after university was specifically in financial accounting, so putting together accounts for a public sector organisation, and certainly the work that we did on financial accounting, but across the board, really set me in good stead. And like I said, the standards that were set at Newcastle, and you know, the kind of the depth of the study as well was really set you in good stead. Certainly going into a work environment, and you know, being able to do something from the get-go. And I think nowadays, I think the course is offered with a year in industry as well. So you know, even more so that kind of preparation for the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely, and you're right. It is that all students have, the majority of students do have the opportunity, excuse me, to go off and do something in industry for a year, as well as shorter term opportunities as well. So hopefully it's just been built on, you know. So in terms of your current role, obviously it's a long and winding road, but can you talk a little bit about how you ended up in your current position?
Yeah, I think certainly from university, I went into a further education college as a financial accountant, and kind of worked my way up from there. So you know, one thing you kind of sign up for if you're an accountant is that working and studying at the same time, particularly after university. So I did a fair few years of that, qualified with an ACCA qualification, and in the meantime got quite a few promotions up through the ranks, so then became finance manager, and then sort of as happens sometimes in a career, I got made redundant. Did 6 months with an American company called GE, which was a really interesting time, having been in the public sector for that period. And at that point, I got my first job in the NHS in Doncaster, and you know, that I think I sort of found my place, if you like, in the NHS, and from there, again, working my way up through sort of various finance roles through assistant director, and ended up moving back to Newcastle in 2004 with my wife and our young daughter at the time, who's going to her own university open day tomorrow, as it happens. So we're you know, set up base in Newcastle, and then I've worked again through various levels up to deputy director, and then this secondment came up in 2016 to look at kind of a bit of a wider role, really looking at finance, but also looking at kind of workforce, more strategy, policy, etc. Working at the centre of the NHS, which I think my career up to then prepared me for, and you know, allowed me to take that kind of wider role. And obviously, in the intervening years, I've done an MBA as well, which had helped me with that. Sadly, not at Newcastle. I wasn't living there at the time, but that really set me up for the role I'm doing now, and hopefully, you know, a couple more promotions as time goes by.
That's fantastic. So would it be fair to say that, because I think quite often a lot of our students feel under pressure to, you know, pick a career, pick a path, and I think the expectation is that you go directly into that. It sounds like, you know, like a lot of people, you kind of found your way, or maybe your career path only makes sense in retrospect. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I think one bit of advice I would give is that whichever career you go into first, you're not signing up for that for life. I think that's probably more true nowadays. People tend to move jobs a lot more, certainly from my experience of the organisation I'm in now. I'm recruiting my third team. People have moved on, promoted, etc. So the workplace is a lot more dynamic. And I think with joining an organisation such as the NHS, a big one, but it probably holds true for any sort of large organisation, there are opportunities that come up, and you know, it's one of those things where a lot of things make sense in, like I say, in retrospect. But if you take your chances as they arise, and you know, challenge yourself, do something different. And again, it goes back to that rigour of the sort of Newcastle degree that I did. It gave you the confidence that actually, yes, I can manage at this level, and I am able to take those opportunities and move my career forward. And you know, my future career is probably in a much wider sphere than finance, but that sort of background in finance, I know the management degrees offered as well. I've got lots of friends still to this day who studied the business management degree. They've gone on to have fairly varied careers as well. So it is a good start, and it does pay to take the opportunities when they arise.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. Obviously, we want to keep things positive, but I'm aware that no career is totally perfect. I was wondering, would you be able to talk us through, or at least allude to, a couple of the challenges that you face in your current role, and how you manage that challenge?
Yeah, I think certainly, you know, the big one at the moment is coronavirus, and we've kind of, I think it's a challenge, but we've also seen, you know, exactly what the NHS can do when its back's against the wall. So it's been a hard period. This, you know, normally I would probably be speaking to you from one of our offices in Newcastle or in London, where I'm based, and there's also, you know, a lot of work has gone into the job that the NHS has done. So I think, yeah, that's been a big challenge, I think, as a kind of one-off. I think the other part of the sort of NHS career, and you notice it as you go further up the chain, is the kind of political side of it. So, you know, we certainly are a political organisation in terms of the NHS. We're run by a government department, and that can have its own challenges. It can have its own benefits as well. You can get things done quicker, but there are challenges in that also.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, there's going to be some couple of obvious ones there, but what are some of the rewards that you find working in your role and obviously in the NHS as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've stuck around for sort of 20 odd years, and I think there's a lot of people who dedicate their full career to the NHS. It's that kind of organisation. I think once you get in there, you realise the kind of opportunities that are there for you, and also from someone leaving university's point of view, there's some tremendous opportunities for graduates. The graduate scheme within the NHS is often in the sort of top 2 or 3 graduate schemes, as rated by those doing them, and as rated by the universities. So that there's a great way to get into the NHS there, but once you're in, the opportunities are limitless. We're a 1.3 million employee organisation, so within that, if you've got the sort of drive and determination, there are plenty of opportunities. There's no way that you can come into the NHS and get kind of stuck in a job with no sort of prospects. It's the kind of organisation that challenges you all the time, and if you respond positively to that, then the opportunities will be there and you will advance.
Yeah, and I guess somewhere like the NHS is going to be constantly evolving, and innovation and renewal will be a big part of how it keeps moving forward as well, I guess.
It is, yeah. There's some of my older colleagues, they'll say the only constant here is change, and we do have a lot of innovation. You see, certainly from the on the sort of operations side of things within the NHS, the advances in medicine, even since I've been part of the NHS, have been absolutely fantastic. There's a cohort of people who are alive today who probably wouldn't have been alive 10 years ago, which that's testament to the NHS and the kind of the innovation that we drive, and also the dedication of the people who work there, the sort of the frontline staff and those who sort of support them behind the scenes.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm going to wind my own questions down now, and I'm going to pass it over to the questions that some of our offer holders have submitted. So without further ado, I'm going to start with Holly's question, and she's looking at urban planning, and she's asked, how long did it take you to get your first graduation role after your degree?
I think a great question, Holly. I think I finished my final exam on the Thursday, and went back home and started my new job on the Monday. So it didn't take that long. I was quite lucky. We're in the sort of teeth of a fairly big recession in the mid-90s, so I was able to secure a job back where I lived, and a good job at that sort of paid for my accountancy training. So I got straight onto the ACCA course after that. So yeah, it wasn't long, but it was fortuitous that it was quite local as well.
But no gap year, sadly.
No gap year. No, I'm not a gap year. Probably retirement plan, I suspect.
Okay, that's great, thank you. And Freddie, who's looking at agriculture, asks, how do you feel university helped you? So that's obviously quite a broad one, but is there any sort of main sort of takeaway that you have?
I suppose the obvious one, I met my wife when I was in Newcastle, so that was a big help. But I think certainly the kind of the rigour of the course, and the kind of the level that you study at in Newcastle. I actually live with a couple of people who did agriculture at university as it goes, and I'm still in touch with one of them who's now, I think he's associate professor up in Edinburgh. So that's the kind of the level of people that you study alongside in Newcastle, and people do sort of move on, but yeah, good luck with the agriculture.
Thank you. And we've got a question from Inns, who's looking at combined honours, and they ask, how important is relevant work experience when trying to get a graduate job? Is work experience more important to employers than other extracurricular activities such as being a student athlete? Now, I've certainly got my thoughts on that, but it'd be good to hear yours.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, I was never a student athlete, but I knew a few people who were, and the sort of the discipline you needed, particularly sort of during student years with all the distractions, to be able to achieve at that level. That is an excellent transferable skill. In terms of the work experience, again, I was able to. I actually worked a couple of summers at the college where I ended up getting my first job. I was able to get summer work. They were always busy during the summer because they had kind of an enrolment season that they had, so they're always taking people on, particularly sort of office-based people who had some financial background. So that was fortuitous. I was able to get some work experience, and yeah, that really helped me secure my first job.
Fantastic. I think just to sort of like chime in on that, although I do think any kind of experience is really important, I would say don't always rule out the extracurricular as well, especially in the current climate. Anything that you can do to make productive use of your time, be it a personal pursuit or something a bit more professional. I think, you know, we always talk to students about developing your soft skills as well as your technical skills, and thinking about the broader transferable skills that you get from anything that you take part in at university. So I would say rule nothing out at this stage. Okay, moving on, we've got Niall who's looking at pharmacy, and he asks a very simple question. What makes us more hireable?
I think we've touched on quite a lot of those bits, but that's a great question now. The simple ones often are. I think certainly that kind of background in you know, the Newcastle degree certainly helps. That's a number one. I think number two, the kind of work experience that we just talked about there. But I think the one thing that I always look for in people, and you know, as someone who does quite a lot of interviewing and recruiting, I always look at, well, okay, you might not get the person in front of you who has all the relevant skills that you need for the job, but there's certain things that you can't teach. So, you know, that I always look for kind of the attitudes that somebody has, rather than, you know, perhaps the kind of skills that a couple of days training can teach them. So that the things I always look for are things like people who are proactive, who'll do things without being asked. That kind of a can-do attitude, I think, is really, really important, and that goes for kind of your studies as well. I think, and also that the kind of soft skills to be able to get on and be a good member of a team. Employers will often look for someone who'll fit in well with the team that they've already got. So I would say those are the things to look at.
Fantastic, thank you. And Grace asks, who's looking at geography, she asks, what are the type of factors that you considered when you were applying for jobs?
I mean, as an accountant, I guess you're looking, if that's the career you want to go into, you're looking for somewhere where you can develop your skills firstly, but also where you can where the organisation will offer you study to get you to the next level. I think certainly in the accountancy career, getting that professional qualification is kind of your gold standard. So the degree is great, but then if you want to work further in the profession, you need that qualification. So an employer that would support you to do ACCA, SIPFA, CIMA, ACA, that kind of thing would be a really desirable thing.
That's great, thank you very much. And Rachel has a very good question here. She's asked, have you been under a lot more pressure during the pandemic?
Rachel, that is a fantastic question, and the answer is a clear yes. I think certainly with the NHS's response, you'll have seen from the news some of the achievements that the NHS has made. You know, we've been able to get new hospitals up and running in less than a fortnight, a lot of which has been down to the sort of ingenuity of the NHS, but also working with our partners. So, you know, I've had quite a bit to do actually in my role with the military in this pandemic, and they've been absolutely fantastic. You know, we're lucky to have the armed forces that we have in this country. but I think certainly the pressure's been on, and for me, I kind of see it as the the part of my career that when I eventually retire, when I meet up with NHS colleagues, this is probably the time that we'll talk most about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been the making of a lot of people from all different walks of life.
It has, you know, for the people who sort of volunteered to come back to the NHS after retirement. We've got a lot of people sort of who call them frontline workers, who, you know, put in incredible hours and incredible dedication to look after people during this, but also the people in the who support them, you know, who coordinated things and made sure that everything runs smoothly.
Fantastic. I think that wraps up most of the of our questions from our offer holders. I do have one final question for you, and that is, looking back, is there anything you wish you'd known when coming to university that you would like to share with our partner students?
I suppose in terms, there's always that wish to have a sort of 40-year-old experience in an 18-year-old body, but you know, I think from my point of view, I really enjoyed my experience in Newcastle. I don't think there's anything I would change, to be honest. I met some tremendous people. You know, it's a city that we certainly came back to. I have no intention of leaving. So I think from my point of view, my experience in Newcastle was entirely positive. I guess the only thing from my point of view is that perhaps I would have liked to have done my degree in the new business and management building. I've been there a couple of times. It's absolutely wonderful. We were in the Armstrong building when I was doing my degree, and it was a lot different. So perhaps the sort of modern facilities that the university has now would have enhanced things yet further.
Oh yeah, that's so inspiring. Even just walking in there, it really does make you stand up a little bit taller. So yeah, I can well understand that. Well, I think that wraps up the majority of the questions. I hope we haven't grilled you too much.
Oh, that's absolutely fine.
But I just want to say thank you so much for your time. I know you've been busy, obviously, and I know your week is far from over. So thank you so much for all your insights, and hopefully we'll speak to you again soon.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.